Welcome. What is up? Welcome to The Mixer. Today is, what is it? Oh man, I'm on the spot. Is it Thursday or is it Wednesday? This is
It
quarantine.
is. It is Thursday.
It's Thursday, July 23rd, and the Padres are still 500. That might be the last time I could say that. So,
Hey, they might go above 500. You never know.
yeah. I'm your host, RC. I'm joined by my co-host here, Jeff. Jeff, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing real good. It's a little early this morning. I didn't sleep great last night, but I'm doing good. Baseball's back. Basketball's back.
Baseball is back. Sports is back. Sports is back. Are back. You know. Yeah, that's gonna be the focus of the show today. However, my man, I am having a week. I'll tell you, I have had some of the strangest customer service experiences in the past week or two. And I mean, maybe I'll save the second one for the next podcast, but I got to tell you about this Costco uh, occurrence. This
Okay.
happened. This happened last Friday. And by the way, how do you feel about Costco? Are you a card holder? Are you a member?
I am a member, but I think Costco is one of those places that people do their regular shopping at that they
Uh-huh.
shouldn't. Costco creates a lot of waste
Yeah.
um, for the average person, I believe.
Yeah, man. You mean you don't need 6 pounds of spinach or 108 ounces of shredded cheese?
Nope.
Yeah. So I've always had this kind of hottish take that Costco is trash, and I haven't had a membership for a long time, but somebody gifted me a membership not that long ago. I got the kid, and I will say Costco is good for a few things. Gas, number one. Um,
Okay,
booze.
so I will debate that. Like I've looked at Costco and they're like 20 cents less than my gas station close to me, but they're like a 15-minute drive for me to get to. And then the line is through like forever every time I go. It seems like, at least for me,
Yeah.
time-wise, it's worth it to pay the extra 20 cents.
See, I have one right along my path to work, and when I was driving, and I would wake up early, I'd get
Yeah,
there around when it opened, you just drive right up. So it was
gotcha.
pretty convenient. And then also, I've had one on my path on the way home from work. So, anywho, a little bit more convenient for me there. However, this time, dude. I mean, I don't know. Very bad customer service experience. So
Dang.
everybody knows the air is still poison, and me being, in healthcare, not on the front lines, but still an essential worker somewhat. I guess that's debatable. I don't like being out in the stores in general right now. Mainly, it's more of the public that is the issue. But anyway, so I do my shopping. I'm about to finish. I'm over by where the pharmacy is. Everybody, all the layouts are the same. Everybody knows the pharmacy's up by the register, somewhat at every Costco. And
Yeah,
I realized like, oh, we need some Cheerios. The baby loves Cheerios. I bet you they're not $4 a box here, and they probably have a big ass one. So I go to find the Cheerios. I park my cart. At the end of the aisle, so it's out of the way, so people can get by. Those carts are about the size of a freaking Boeing 747.
right.
Um, me being a former grocery store, I hated carts blocking the aisles, so I put it to the side. And anyway, go get my Cheerios. Come back, the cart's gone. I'm like, there's a guy stocking the shelves right next to it. I say, hey man, did you see somebody take my cart? He's like, oh, I just started stocking the shelves a few minutes ago. I'm like, yeah, man, I just left my cart here a few minutes ago. Did you see it?
Yeah.
He's like, no. I was like, well, where would they take it? He said, I don't know. He said, maybe up in the front. I'm like, okay. So I go up in the front. There's some carts parked where you can tell it's the take stuff back that have been returned, blah, blah, blah. I
Right.
look, none of my stuff's there. I go find this other guy. I ask him, hey, man, where do you keep the carts that you think are abandoned? He said, up by the front. And I'm like, okay, I go up there, still nothing. I asked somebody there, like, did somebody bring up a cart? My cart's gone. I think they thought it was abandoned. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh yeah, if you leave your cart here, they think it's abandoned. I'm like, no, I didn't leave, or they think it's for go backs. I'm like, I didn't leave my cart here. I left it over at the end of one of the aisles for 5 minutes, and it's gone.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it's not up here, so I don't know. And I'm just like,
Dang.
okay. So I go like looking around. I'm looking around for somebody pushing my cart. Can't find him. I finally give up, and like I didn't plan on staying there that long. I got the baby.
Right.
I don't have that much time, and so I'm like, shit. I'm like, okay, I'll go get the stuff I need. And so I just got like bananas and berries because the baby goes ape shit for that stuff. And we were out. I was like, I'll do my rest of my shopping tomorrow or something.
Right.
And then so then I come up to the register. Sure fucking enough, there's some of my stuff in one of the carts. And I'm
Right.
like, that's my stuff. And they're like, oh, everything in this cart? I was like, no. I was like, but some of that is. And I asked you guys where it was, and you said it wasn't here, and that if you didn't have it, you didn't know what to do.
Right.
And like, oh, well, it's because if you leave it and it has refrigerated stuff, they want to get it back on the shelf right away. And I'm like, okay, but I was asking you guys and nobody offered to help. And they're like, oh, okay, well, what's yours? And then like looking at the cart, and I'm like, well, and then I look at things that I had, and it's just all booze, and I'm just like, this moment. So I'm like, the tequila, the whiskey, and those two wine bottles. Oh, and
Nice.
the protein bars. The protein bars are mine, and I'm just
There you
like,
go.
oh man, I look like such an asshole right now. Like I'm mad.
Hey, at least you went to Costco for the right stuff, right?
Yeah.
The alcohol is great there, and then the protein bars, because they don't go bad really. So,
Yeah, man, but I had other stuff too. Like I had fruits and veggies, and that was all gone. I had like organic milk and shit,
yeah.
and all that's left is booze and protein. And I was like, ah. And they're like,
Dang.
we can help you go get your other stuff. I'm like, no. How the hell are you guys gonna be any faster than me? And then so like I was mad. I went and got the rest of my stuff, or at least most of it. And
Yeah.
then went to the register. I had to complain to like two different people, and they gave me a $20 gift card.
There you go.
But man,
So
it
you,
was
you
the
turned
worst.
into a Karen.
Yeah, man, they made me into a Karen. And
That's
like I had to
rough.
talk to the checkers, I had to complain to them, I had to complain to a supervisor who's just like, yeah, we'll talk to the staff. I'll make sure that they know not to do that. And then I'm talking to the
Sure.
manager, and they're like, oh, it's because we have inventory tomorrow, so there's more people here, and that's why they need to get stuff back on the shelves. So you think I care? Like
Right.
that doesn't make this any better. So
That's funny.
anyway, Costco is trash except for a few things. If you need 6 pounds of spinach, by all means. All right, man. I know you got to get through this, so let's get to it, shall we? Let's talk some sports.
Let's
Um,
go.
I may or may not have a story about the Jeep dealership next week, so we'll sit on that.
I'm
We
ready
had our
for that.
baseball draft. Let's touch on this briefly. Jeff,
Okay.
how do you like your team?
It's all right. This is a weird year in general, I think, for a lot of us.
Hmm.
So normally, just to give a little idea of our league, we have 12 people in the league. We do an auction draft with a $275 budget. I believe each roster has normally, oh, it is 25 players. Um, 20 people start, you get 5 bench spots. I'm not going to go over all the positions, but pitcher wise, you start one regular pitch, or you start 4 pitchers. It could be pitcher or relief pitcher. You start 2 starters and 1 relief pitcher, so 7 pitchers total. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's, nothing crazy. I think my team overall, I didn't do as much preparation as I would in a normal season. Also harder to prepare because some of these guys we don't know how much they're going to play, if they're going to play. Um, Also, over the course of a 162 game season, it's usually worth it to pay up for a few guys.
Hmm.
Because over 162 games, Mike Trout's going to be better than your average Joe. But for a third of the season, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. You know what I mean? Any of these guys in the majors can be all-star caliber for a third of the season,
Yeah.
right? So I think that was a tougher one. I know you went with a strategy I thought about, which was just get the name guys because you know them, right? Basically, right? You got three of them, I think. Huh?
I said my top heavy roster was
Yeah.
accident.
Well, I mean, an accident, but that's you still did it. I did that more with pitching because I trust those guys a little bit more. They tend to be, I assume, my research a little more consistent year to year.
Mm.
Um, Hitters, uh, not that good hitters aren't consistent, but especially to start seasons, some guys struggle at the start almost every year. Some guys are a little bit better. It just kind of depends. I got a couple hitters I liked. I got Gary Sanchez, who I get pretty much every year. Um, I got Stanton. I'm not a huge fan of. I really want to Judge, but I happened to mistime my bathroom break.
Oh man, I missed out on a few players because I was just sorting through the list. I was like, where
Yes.
that guy?
So, and that's another thing too, is the auction is not, I don't give as much time as I would like for bidding and stuff. Um, just because we have so many players to get through, right? 25 players, 12 teams. It's a lot of players.
Yeah, hopefully one day we can do that live and really get into it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy with my team. However, I just having the baby, I just know if a time is like hard set, I may or may not be available. So I
Right.
edited my values for the players, and I wanted either Trout, Betts, or Acuna at the top, maybe two of them if the
Yeah.
price was right. And so I modified um, my values, and then I log in maybe 5-10 minutes late, and to my surprise, I had all three of them, and I'm like, okay,
Well,
and I had no money.
you got hit. Um, yeah, you got hit with a little bit of the auto draft issue.
uh,
Um,
was everybody still logging in themselves?
Yeah, because so I don't know if you noticed like what you got those guys for, but it
Uh-huh.
was a decent amount cheaper than what a couple of those guys went for last year.
Yeah, I did. I did
Um,
notice that.
yeah, like I mean, like don't get me wrong, like it wasn't cheap, right? Trout was still $60. I think
Yeah,
Acuna or Betts were $60 or whatever, but um,
previous years
you,
the highest bid was like $70. So
yeah, exactly. So to get them at a little bit of a discount, not terrible.
yeah,
Um, But it did kind of wipe you out pretty early in terms of a lot of those mid-tier guys. You had almost no shot at them unless you wanted to like take all your money for like six or seven players.
yeah, my team's definitely top heavy. I was able to get Kershaw, and gonna be a lot of plug and plays for pitching probably. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Season gets underway today. We'll keep you guys updated. Speaking of seasons getting under the way, sports are back, man. This weekend was like the classic summer weekend, right? There were no like obviously there's no NFL, there's no basketball usually this time of year, but there was a nice selection of other sports I like to call it. There were two IndyCar races because the IndyCar series is trying to catch up, so they're doing two races on some weekends. One was
Okay.
Friday night, one was Saturday night, so that was fun. There was a Hungary
Yeah.
Grand Prix, the Formula One race. There was the FA Cup semis. There was a UFC Fight Island. There was an IMSA race. And then we got obviously baseball, the NBA, and hockey kicking up soon. Lots of NFL talk. Training camps are getting underway. Um, it was a fun weekend. Let's talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix real quick. So it was kind of a wet race. I believe qualifying was wet.
It
The
was.
Mercs. The Mercs started 1-2. I predicted a crash on Saturday that they would take each other out. They did not. Jeff, you were right. Hamilton dominated.
Yeah.
The podium
If
was.
you, I don't know if you watched qualifying, but if you'd watched qualifying, you would have realized Hamilton just had this in the bag.
Yeah.
Like, he was number one through all qualifying rounds.
Uh-huh.
He got fastest time on command, basically, each time. And it was just watching him, it was like he was running a different race than everyone on Saturday in qualifying.
It was a clinic for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, like qualifying is very different than an actual race, but it was just he was so dominant in qualifying that it was like, oh, he's gonna take this pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, so the podium ended up being Hamilton, Bottas, so Mercedes 1-2, Verstappen in third on the podium, who actually crashed in the warm-up to the race, and the Red Bull team was scrambling to get his car ready. Kind of crazy stuff. You don't see that in too many other sports, but yeah, the mechanics were going wild minutes before the race and got his car ready, and he finished third. So
there were a few things that happened before the race that I found pretty interesting that I didn't know about till after.
What were the other things?
Well, there was Verstappen, but when I don't know if you watch the F1 YouTube channel, I'm sure you do.
Occasionally.
They had a video yesterday of a former driver explaining what happened, like how he crashed, and explaining the way the cars are. So basically, when they do warm-up laps, they have to get the car to go through every gear, right? Because if they don't, the car learns the gears, basically, is the way they described it. If they don't get a car to go through every gear, then when they're in the race, if they need that gear, right? Like let's say they need their top gear, which is they go 1 through 8. If they need 8th gear, it'll take a second or two to switch, right? And that can cost you tenths of a second.
Yeah.
So they try to get that out of the way and get it during warm-ups. Well, the track was wet, which led to another issue. But the track was wet, and where Verstappen crashed, he was trying to get the car up to 8th. And in doing so, he had to wait longer to brake. So when he got there, he tried to brake pretty much immediately, but it was a little bit too late, and the tires locked up.
Yeah.
And then that's what caused the crash.
Yeah.
So a little bit driver error to get there. But his team did amazing and got him back in the race.
Yeah, good anecdote there. I love hearing about that stuff. It's really unique to auto racing.
And then the other one, the American team in F1, Haas, both of them got hit with penalties.
Yeah.
10-second penalties, but it was probably worth it for both of them. So on that, right before
the formation lap,
they both pitted, right? Because they wanted to switch tires. So they were the only two cars on the grid, I think, that did it. They came in and switched out their wet tires for slicks, and it really benefited them in race.
Yeah.
They got penalties because their team, which wasn't supposed to have any communication with them, right? It wasn't supposed to tell them anything. They're supposed to be non-aided, I believe, or something like that. The drivers didn't decide on their own to go get tires. The team told them to go get tires, so they ended up getting hit with a penalty. But I think, like, overall, when you look at their race and where they started versus where they finished, it probably worked out for them. But I just thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see the teams do kind of mix up their strategies when they're put in a spot like that, and you'll end up seeing if you get like one of the top guys that has to start from the back, they'll gamble with their tire selection, and sometimes it pays off and they end up on the podium or even winning. It's exciting stuff. So just some notes here. Lance Stroll, the Canadian, with not Force India, Racing Point. The Pink Panthers, he finished 4th, which is last year's Mercedes.
I was going to say, isn't that An older Mercedes car?
Yeah, it's last year's
Okay.
Mercedes. And Vettel, the Ferrari, he finished sixth. Leclerc and the other Ferrari finished 11th. Terrible season for them continues. Ricciardo, eighth, and Lando Norris, who was third in the points, I think he dropped to fourth now. He finished an unlucky 13th. But yeah, it was a good race. Not great. We got the British GP in 2 weeks on August 2nd, and they'll be there back-to-back weeks. So
Nice.
looking forward to that. It's a great track. Maybe we'll get some weather involved, as often happens in Silverstone.
Right.
And then also I watched the 2008 Brazilian GP. I was live tweeting that. That was fun. So I might do that again, just if anybody is interested in that. Jeff, we are uniquely positioned that if Formula One ever ends up on DraftKings, man, we might be the one-stop shop for that.
I'm ready
just so
for
you
it.
know. Moving on, Soccer. We had the FA Cup semis, and Arsenal looked the best out of the four teams. To be honest, they beat Manchester City 2-0. Aubameyang got a brace. The goalie made some clutch saves, and then we have Chelsea. Somehow, they only scored one goal. Manchester United scored two, but they lost 3-0 because two of them were own goals. They look.
Seems kind of typical for Man U recently.
Yeah, they look pretty bad. So that sets up the FA Cup final August 1st at 10 a.m. Arsenal versus Chelsea. I'm going to have some serious Bluefoot FOMO, which is usually where I go to watch the big Arsenal games. And yeah, the air is still poisoned, so that won't be happening. Jeff, are you excited for the FA Cup final? Are you surprised on who's there?
I mean, not really surprised on who's there. Both teams in the last couple of years really only show up for third place type events. FA Cup, I don't know how it's looked at in Europe, but from my outsider perspective, it's probably, at best, fourth on the list of like things a team wants to win.
It's the Arsenal Cup, though, man. Come on,
Yeah,
don't bring me down like this.
And don't get me wrong, winning a tournament that has like these kind of teams involved is kind of awesome, no matter the year or whatever. But like, looking at it objectively a little bit, Man City hasn't cared since they've lost the Premier League, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, once Liverpool clinched, Man City's, I think they've lost a couple games or they haven't performed all that well.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Liverpool's lost some games. They lost to Arsenal.
Yeah,
Scoreboard.
exactly. But I don't know who I'm rooting for in this. I think I kind of want Arsenal. You and Matt, pretty big Arsenal fans. It'd be nice to see you guys get the win, but part of me, Pulisic kind of has my heartstrings. If he starts for Chelsea, I might lean that way, to be completely honest. If he doesn't start, I'll go the Arsenal way.
Yeah, that's understandable. I am really excited for this final. Pulisic in there. So, it's a nice hedge. So if Chelsea does win, we're like, oh, well, and if Pulisic plays well, because he didn't play in the semi, or at least he didn't start.
Right.
So, if he does well, obviously I want Arsenal to win, but if he does well and Chelsea wins, it will be kind of nice to see him win. I guess that would be his first European trophy. I don't think Dortmund won anything when he was there. I know they played in some big Champions League games, but I don't think they got any silverware from that. Also in soccer, local news, the SD Oil lost to the LA Galaxy in a U.S. Cup game, 1-0. They hit the post kind of late in the game, so they're looking good. There's talks about them putting a stadium here. We'll have to see. And also, they have some sick jerseys, man. They got the Stone sponsorship. I want one. If anybody out there has a hookup, send them our way. We have yet to receive a swag bag, and we are all about getting the swag. So I
I'll
wanted to
wear it
follow.
everywhere.
Yeah, exactly, and we'll promote you. Um, I wanted to follow up on this Redskins story because we talked about it last week that there was some big story that was going to drop, and it did drop. Just to recap, so the Washington Post wrote a story last week where 15 women recounted a misogynistic work environment, 14 of which did not give their names because they had signed NDAs with the team. I mean, that tells you kind of how prevalent it was there. So the article detailed text messages, inappropriate acts, and lewd comments by multiple men at the organization. Most of the I don't know if you call it allegations or incidents involved groping, staring, being told to wear tight clothes or less clothes, instructed to flirt with investors, and then kind of the most just creepy story was about their plexiglass stairway. Apparently they have some sort of plexiglass stairway in the lobby, and there was an incident where a female worker was going up the stairs and some guy was trying to look up her skirt and didn't even try to hide it, which was really just disgusting. So 3 people were fired as a result of the allegations in the article, including the longtime team radio host. During this whole thing, the Redskins HR office was pretty much non-existent, so these women had nowhere to go to report all these incidents. Dan Snyder definitely knew, according to the article, and there was an incident where he kind of berated a former male cheerleader who was working in the office, told him to do cartwheels to kind of mock him. So yeah, I mean, it just sounded like that whole office was basically a set of madmen.
Yeah.
Because of this, though, it doesn't seem like it's likely that it's going to force the sale of the team. And I don't know if maybe it's just kind of weird how it's all played out. I feel like if the story would have dropped on its own, it would have had more impact, but it was kind of hyped up. So people were making some really damning speculative things about maybe him having ties to Epstein, maybe about child trafficking. The stories were wild. And so when finally the story dropped and it's like, okay, like, yeah, it's disgusting, but we've heard this story a million times, like men are assholes, and there's a lot of toxic work environments out there. It's still terrible, but it, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to have the impact that it maybe would have if it dropped on its own. What
I'm
do you
with
think?
you. I think that this should not have been hyped up.
Yeah.
It was kind of a letdown, to be honest, with what some people were saying and then what actually came out.
Yeah.
This actually seems worse, but similar to what happened with the Mavericks and Mark Cuban. They had something like this a few years ago. I don't believe it was nearly as many women or nearly as bad. And I don't believe Cuban was really tied to it at all. But it was under his watch. I do remember him getting in a little bit of trouble for it. Obviously, we know Dan Snyder's a piece of shit. That's kind of a given at this point. In football, this type of thing is this should never be acceptable, but it's really not surprising from a lot of the people that, if you've been around football at all,
It's sad.
Yeah. And so I do think that, I think the one thing that should change is these, NDAs, right? They happen all the time and they keep, I don't know. I don't know how they get people to sign them, all that stuff, but NDAs are one of the worst things ever. I get an
Yeah.
NDA from like company to company if I have a really valuable employee who wants to leave, but like what I do is like special to us,
Hmm.
right? I don't want him to take that. Cool, sign an NDA. You can't do anything like this for a year, right? But I'm not
Yeah.
going to prevent your employment or whatever, but you can't talk about our work. Doing this, like this is something that happened in these women's lives and they
Hmm.
can't talk about it. Like that's wrong.
Yeah.
My
It's
opinion.
it's a tool for people with power to leverage their position to not face any consequences.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
if they can have some sort of third party running HR, that would be a benefit. Um, However, sadly, I don't know if this changes anything. I think we'll just have to rely on, just good reporting, and so stuff like this is brought to light. Um, my all right, you can drop, Jeff. If you don't mind just leaving it. Do you need to use your laptop?
I don't. I can just turn my camera off and
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I just want to get through some of this stuff so that so we
Go
have it on
for it.
record and we don't have to wait till next week. So
Cool.
thanks, my dude. You'll be back next week.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. So just continuing. My neighbor had an interesting theory about this Redskins story. My neighbor, I brought him up before, Paul Rudd, we'll call him. Um, he has this idea that so the paper, the Washington Post, is owned by Amazon owner Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has been known to be in the market for an NFL team. So he thinks it's a hit piece on an NFL owner to try to force the sale, and that Dan Snyder got wind of the article. That's why he announced that the team name was going to be changed so he can get some goodwill in the eyes of other owners and in the public, so that when this story dropped, he wouldn't be forced to sell the team. And basically, Jeff Bezos's plan backfired in that also Dan Snyder started to leak the information about the article being really bad, so that when the article actually did drop, and it was kind of a story that we've heard before in other workplaces, however disgusting, didn't have the impact that maybe it would have had otherwise. So my neighbor has some interesting thoughts. However, you know, it is interesting to kind of theorize. So how about we go through some coronavirus updates? So this week in the air is poison. So Felipe Nasser, IMSA driver who contracted the virus not that long ago, he actually ended up winning in Sebring. It was a sprint race. It wasn't the traditional 12-hour race. It was kind of one-off for the coronavirus season. They've had to catch up on some races, so they've added things to other rate tracks on the calendar. So he won. He went from having the coronavirus a few weeks ago to winning. So good news there. Also some information about Freddie Freeman. Apparently he was hit really hard with the coronavirus. He detailed that he had a temperature that spiked of 104.5. So a man in peak physical condition hit him really hard. The Blue Jays will not be allowed to play home games in Toronto because of the fear of Americans on other Major League Baseball teams traveling there and potentially bringing the virus in. I believe they are going to be playing in Pittsburgh. So that's how that